In the quiet little town of Willow Creek, life moved at a slow pace. The days were predictable and everyone knew each other's business. The local high school was no exception. It had its own set of rules, unwritten but fiercely followed. Cliques ruled the hallways, and popularity wasn't just a label, it was power. For years, things had stayed the same, until one crisp autumn morning, when a new student walked through the doors of Willow Creek High. Amara Taylor stepped into the bustling hallway, her backpack slung casually over one shoulder. She scanned the faces around her, taking in the posters advertising football games, drama club auditions, and bake sales. Her dark skin stood out among the mostly pale faces, and her braided hair caught the light as she turned to find her homeroom. A few curious glances followed her, but Amara didn't seem bothered. She carried herself with confidence, a quiet strength that made people take notice even if they didn't say anything aloud. Back home, Amara had been used to blending in more easily. Growing up in Los Angeles, diversity wasn't unusual. Here, in Willow Creek, though, she quickly realized she was different. Not just because of how she looked, but also because of the way she carried herself. While many students tiptoed around the popular crowd, trying not to draw attention to themselves, Amara seemed unbothered by their whispers. She smiled warmly at anyone who met her gaze, making small talk with ease. It wasn't long before a couple of friendly faces emerged. Jake, a lanky boy with glasses who loved science fiction, and Mia, an aspiring artist always doodling in her notebook. They introduced themselves during lunch on her first day, offering her a seat at their table. Amara appreciated their kindness, sensing they weren't part of the cool group but didn't care. But not everyone was welcoming. Across the cafeteria sat Chloe Harper, the self-proclaimed queen bee of Willow Creek High. With her perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothes, and sharp tongue, Chloe thrived on control. She ruled the school with an iron grip, deciding who was in and who was out. Anyone who dared cross her faced consequences. Snide comments, rumors spread like wildfire, or worse, public humiliation. Chloe prided herself on spotting outsiders immediately, and Amara fit the bill perfectly. From the moment Amara entered the school, Chloe's icy blue eyes locked onto her. At first it was subtle, a glare here, a whisper there, but soon, Chloe began testing the waters. During gym class, she accidentally tripped Amara while they were running laps. Later, she laughed loudly when Amara dropped her pencil case in the middle of math class, scattering pens across the floor. Each time, Amara brushed it off without saying a word. She refused to give Chloe the satisfaction of seeing her upset. What Chloe didn't know, and what most of the school didn't realize either, was that Amara came from a world far removed from Willow Creek. Adopted at a young age by none other than Vin Diesel, the action movie star known for his tough guy roles and deep voice, Amara grew up surrounded by fame and fortune. But she never flaunted it. In fact, she rarely mentioned her adoptive father unless someone asked directly. To her, being Vin Diesel's daughter wasn't something to brag about. It was just part of her story. She preferred to be judged for who she was rather than whose name she shared. Despite her calm demeanor, Amara couldn't ignore the growing tension between her and Chloe. Every snarky comment, every sneer felt like another brick being laid in the wall separating them. Still, Amara tried to focus on the positives. She enjoyed her classes, especially English literature, where she found solace in stories of underdogs triumphing against all odds. She joined the photography club after school, capturing moments of beauty in the mundane corners of Willow Creek. And she continued to spend time with Jake and Mia, who became her closest allies in this unfamiliar place. One afternoon, as Amara sorted through her locker between periods, she overheard two girls talking nearby. "Did you hear?" one whispered excitedly. "Chloe says she's going to teach that new girl a lesson." The other giggled nervously. "Maybe she'll back off after this." Amara froze, gripping the edge of her locker tightly. She had suspected Chloe might escalate things, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill down her spine. That evening, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, Amara debated whether to tell her dad about what was happening. Vin Diesel wasn't just a celebrity. He was her rock, the person who had raised her with love and wisdom. He often called to check in, his booming voice filling the room with warmth. Tonight, however, Amara hesitated. What would he think? Would he see her as weak for letting someone bully her? Or worse, would he fly out to Willow Creek and make a scene, drawing unwanted attention to her? She sighed, staring at the screen. Maybe she could handle this on her own. For now. After all, she reminded herself, she was stronger than she looked. Stronger than Chloe gave her credit for. Little did Amara know, the storm brewing in Willow Creek High was about to reach its peak, and when it broke, nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, Amara woke up with a heavy heart but a clear mind. She knew avoiding the situation wasn't an option anymore. Chloe's behavior had crossed a line, and ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. After tossing and turning all night, she finally came to a decision. It was time to involve her dad. Not because she couldn't handle things on her own, but because this wasn't just about her. It was about standing up for what was right. Bullying shouldn't be tolerated no matter who you were or where you came from. That evening, during their weekly video call, Amara hesitated before bringing up the topic. On the screen, Vin Diesel leaned back in his chair, his trademark grin lighting up his face as he asked how school was going. "It's fine," Amara replied at first, trying to sound casual. But her dad had always been perceptive. He tilted his head slightly, studying her expression. "Fine?" he echoed, raising an eyebrow. "You're not exactly selling me on that answer." Amara sighed, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. "Okay, maybe it's not fine," she admitted, her voice softening. For a moment, she debated, glossing over the details, but then she remembered one of her dad's favorite sayings. Sometimes telling the truth is the strongest thing you can do. Taking a deep breath, she told him everything, about Chloe's constant harassment, the rumors, and finally the locker room incident. Her words spilled out faster than she intended, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Vin listened intently, his expression growing darker with each sentence. By the time Amara finished, his jaw was tight, and his knuckles were white from gripping the armrest of his chair. "I'm proud of you for handling this with so much grace," he said after a pause, his deep voice steady but laced with concern. "But sweetheart, nobody should have to deal with that kind of treatment. This isn't okay." Amara nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. She appreciated her dad's support, but she also worried about what might come next. Would he storm into Willow Creek High demanding justice, or worse, use his celebrity status to embarrass Chloe and draw unnecessary attention to the situation? As if reading her thoughts, Vin added, "We'll handle this together, and we'll do it the right way." Over the next hour, they devised a plan. Vin insisted on visiting Willow Creek personally, not to intimidate anyone but to show solidarity with Amara. He wanted to address the issue directly while teaching everyone involved, including Chloe, a valuable lesson about respect and accountability. At first, Amara was hesitant. Having her famous dad show up at school felt like a drastic move, but Vin reassured her. "This isn't about making a scene," he explained. "It's about showing people that actions have consequences. And it's about reminding them that kindness matters more than anything else." By the time their call ended, Amara felt a renewed sense of determination. The following day, she walked into school with her usual confidence, though inside, her nerves were buzzing. She didn't tell anyone, not even Jake or Mia, about Vin's impending arrival. She wanted to keep it low-key until the moment arrived. The next morning, students filed into the hallways as usual, chatting and laughing as they headed to class. Amara stood near her locker, pretending to organize her books while keeping an eye out for her dad. Just as the bell rang for homeroom, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, whispers erupted, and soon, a path began to form down the middle of the hallway. Walking toward Amara, looking effortlessly cool in a leather jacket and jeans, was none other than Vin Diesel. At first, most students didn't realize who he was. They simply noticed the tall, muscular man striding confidently through the halls, exuding charisma with every step. But then someone shouted, "Wait, is that Vin Diesel?" The realization spread like wildfire. Students gawked, phones whipped out, and within seconds the entire school was abuzz with excitement. Amara smiled faintly as her dad approached, his signature warm smile lighting up his face. "Hey, kiddo," he said, pulling her into a quick hug. "Ready to take care of business?" Before Amara could respond, Chloe appeared at the edge of the crowd, her eyes widening in disbelief. She had heard the commotion and come to investigate, expecting some kind of prank or misunderstanding. But when she saw Vin Diesel standing beside Amara, her face went pale. It took her a few seconds to process what was happening, and when she did, panic set in. Vin glanced at Chloe, his expression calm but firm. Without raising his voice or making a scene, he gestured for her to join them. Reluctantly, Chloe stepped forward, her hands trembling as she clutched the straps of her backpack. Around them, students whispered excitedly, speculating about what was going to happen next. "Chloe, right?" Vin began, his deep voice carrying authority without being harsh. Chloe nodded mutely, too stunned to speak. "I understand there's been some tension between you and my daughter," he continued, his tone measured. "And I want to talk to you about it. Not to yell or accuse, but to figure out how we can fix this." For a moment, Chloe looked like she might cry. All her bravado, all the power she had wielded so mercilessly over her peers, seemed to evaporate under Vin's gaze. I didn't know," she stammered, glancing at Amara. I didn't know she was your... I didn't..." Vin held up a hand, cutting her off gently. "It doesn't matter who I am," he said firmly. "What matters is how you treat people. You've been bullying my daughter, saying hurtful things and making her feel unsafe. That's not okay. Do you understand why?" Chloe nodded again, tears welling up in her eyes. For the first time, she seemed genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to. I just..." "You acted out of jealousy or insecurity," Vin finished for her, his tone softening slightly. "And that's something we can work on. But apologizing isn't enough. You need to change your behavior. Real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down." As Vin spoke, the students gathered around listened intently. Many of them had witnessed Chloe's cruelty firsthand, whether directed at Amara or someone else. Now, seeing her humbled and hearing Vin's words made them reflect on their own actions. Some shifted uncomfortably, guilt creeping into their expressions while others nodded in agreement. When Vin finished speaking, he turned to Amara. "Are you okay with giving her a chance to make things right?" he asked softly, ensuring she felt empowered to decide. Amara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah," she said quietly. "If she means it, then okay." With that, Vin addressed the crowd one last time. "Let this be a reminder to all of you," he said, his voice resonating through the hallway. "Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. Treat each other with respect, and don't be afraid to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." As the bell rang signaling the start of class, the students dispersed, buzzing with excitement and newfound perspective. Chloe lingered for a moment longer, her eyes still filled with tears. "Thank you," she murmured to both Amara and Vin before hurrying away. Amara watched her go, feeling a strange mix of emotions, relief, pride, and a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something better, not just for her but for everyone at Willow Creek High. By the end of the semester, Willow Creek High felt like a different place. The once rigid and often cruel hierarchy that had defined its hallways began to loosen, replaced by a quieter but more profound shift toward kindness and inclusion. Students, who had previously kept their heads down, now walked with a little more confidence. Those who had been quick to judge others learned to pause and think before speaking. Even the teachers noticed the change, praising the students for fostering a safer and more welcoming environment. For Amara, the transformation was both heartening and humbling. She hadn't set out to be a catalyst for change. She'd simply wanted to survive her time at Willow Creek without losing herself in the process. Yet somehow her decision to confront Chloe and involve her dad, had sparked something much bigger than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about stopping bullying. It was about creating a culture where bullying no longer thrived. Chloe, too, continued to evolve. Her initial efforts to make amends weren't always smooth. There were moments when old habits crept back in, or when she stumbled over awkward apologies. But she persevered. Slowly, she earned back some of the trust she had broken, not through grand gestures, but through consistent, genuine actions. She joined the school's newly formed anti-bullying committee, working alongside Jake, Mia, and even Amara to organize workshops and awareness campaigns. At first, Amara hesitated to collaborate with Chloe, unsure if she could truly move past what had happened. But seeing Chloe's dedication and hearing her heartfelt speeches during committee meetings helped Amara let go of lingering resentment. One such campaign stood out as a turning point for the entire school. Dubbed Kindness Week, it featured daily activities designed to encourage empathy and connection. On Monday, students wrote anonymous notes of appreciation to classmates they admired. By Tuesday, colorful sticky notes covered the walls of the cafeteria, each one bearing messages like, "You're always so kind," or, "Thanks for making me laugh." Wednesday brought a compliment chain, where students linked paper strips together after sharing compliments with one another. By Friday, the chain stretched across the gymnasium, symbolizing the power of positive words to unite people. During the closing assembly, Chloe stood on stage to share her story. Her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone, but her voice rang clear. "I used to think being popular meant having power over others," she admitted, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "But I was wrong. Real strength comes from lifting people up, not tearing them down. I'm still learning how to do that, but I promise to keep trying." The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in months, Chloe smiled. Not the smug smirk she used to wear, but a real, heartfelt smile. Sitting in the front row, Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. Watching Chloe's journey reminded her of her own growth, the resilience she had discovered within herself, the friendships she had built, and the courage it took to stand up for what was right. As the weeks turned into months, Amara settled into a rhythm at Willow Creek. She excelled in her classes, poured her energy into photography club projects, and cherished the bond she had formed with Jake and Mia. They became her anchor, reminding her that she didn't have to face challenges alone. When final exams rolled around, the three of them studied together late into the night, laughing over inside jokes and fueling themselves with cups of hot chocolate. Meanwhile, Vin Diesel checked in regularly, eager to hear updates about life in Willow Creek. During one video call, he leaned back in his chair, grinning proudly. "Sounds like you've made quite an impact there, kiddo," he said, his deep voice warm with admiration. "Not many people can turn a tough situation into something good. You should be proud." Amara blushed, brushing off the compliment. "I didn't do it alone," she replied. "Everyone played a part, even Chloe." Her dad nodded thoughtfully. "That's the thing about leadership, isn't it? It's not about standing above everyone else, it's about bringing people together. And that's exactly what you've done." Hearing those words filled Amara with a quiet pride. For so long she had doubted whether she belonged in Willow Creek, whether she could navigate its challenges without relying on her famous last name. Now she realized that belonging wasn't about fitting in, it was about finding your place and using it to make a difference. On the last day of school, Amara stood outside the building, watching as students spilled onto the lawn, shouting farewells and snapping selfies. Summer stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities and adventures. As she scanned the crowd, her eyes landed on Chloe, who waved shyly before disappearing into a group of friends. Amara smiled faintly, reflecting on how far they had both come. Later, that evening, as she packed up her room for the summer break, Amara paused to look at a framed photo on her desk. It was taken during Kindness Week, showing her, Chloe, Jake, and Mia standing arm in arm beneath the sprawling compliment chain. In the picture, they were all smiling. Not perfect smiles, but real ones, filled with hope and determination. Amara picked up the frame, tracing its edges with her fingers. She thought about everything that had happened since her first day at Willow Creek. The struggles, the victories, the lessons she had learned along the way. Life wasn't always fair, and people weren't always kind. But sometimes, amidst the chaos, opportunities arose to create something beautiful, to turn pain into purpose and fear into strength. With a satisfied sigh, she placed the photo back on her desk and zipped up her bag. Tomorrow would bring new beginnings, new challenges, and new chances to grow. But tonight she allowed herself to rest, knowing she had left Willow Creek better than she had found it. And that was worth celebrating. Final reflection. What started as a personal battle between two girls became a lesson for an entire community. Through courage, forgiveness, and a commitment to kindness, Amara and Chloe proved that change is possible, even in the unlikeliest of places. Their story served as a reminder that while we can't control every challenge life throws our way, we can choose how we respond. And sometimes those choices ripple outward, touching lives in ways we never expected. The days following Vin Diesel's visit to Willow Creek High were unlike anything the school had ever experienced. News of the Hollywood star's appearance spread like wildfire, not just within the student body but throughout the entire town. Parents talked about it at coffee shops, teachers mentioned it during staff meetings, and even local news outlets picked up the story, referring to it as a lesson in kindness brought to life by action hero Vin Diesel. For a small, sleepy town like Willow Creek, this was big news. But for Amara, the aftermath wasn't about fame or attention. It was about navigating the ripple effects of what had happened. Chloe Harper, once untouchable and feared, now seemed like a shadow of her former self. She avoided eye contact with Amara in the hallways, keeping her head down and sticking close to her closest friends. At first, Amara wondered if Chloe's remorse was genuine or if she was simply embarrassed by being called out publicly. Either way, the bullying stopped completely, a small victory that made Amara feel lighter with each passing day. Still, Amara couldn't ignore the tension between them. Every time their paths crossed, whether in class or during lunch, there was an awkwardness that lingered in the air. Chloe would glance at Amara briefly before looking away, her cheeks flushing red. It was clear she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Amara, on the other hand, wasn't sure what to expect. Would Chloe apologize properly, or would she retreat further into herself, letting shame keep her silent? One afternoon, after gym class, the same place where the locker room incident had occurred, Amara found herself alone in the changing area when Chloe hesitantly approached her. Her hands twisted nervously at her sides, and her voice trembled as she spoke. Can I talk to you for a second?" she asked, barely audible, over the hum of lockers closing around them. Amara paused, surprised but intrigued. She nodded, stepping aside so they could speak privately near the far wall. Chloe took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I wanted to say I'm really sorry," she began, her eyes fixed on the floor. "For everything. I don't know why I acted the way I did. I guess I thought picking on someone would make me feel better about myself, but all it did was make things worse." Her words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Amara studied her face, searching for sincerity. What she saw wasn't defiance or arrogance. It was vulnerability. For the first time, Chloe looked human, stripped of the armor she used to intimidate others. Amara felt a pang of sympathy. She knew what it was like to struggle with insecurities, even if she handled hers differently. "I appreciate you saying that," Amara replied slowly, choosing her words carefully. "But apologizing isn't enough. You've hurt people. Not just me. And if you really mean it, you need to show it. Actions matter more than words." Chloe nodded vigorously, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "And I want to change. I don't want to be that person anymore, I promise." Amara hesitated, weighing her options. Part of her wanted to walk away, to leave Chloe to figure things out on her own. But another part of her remembered her dad's advice. Sometimes forgiveness is the strongest thing you can offer. Taking a deep breath, she decided to give Chloe a chance, not because she owed her anything, but because everyone deserved the opportunity to grow. "Okay," Amara said finally, her tone softening. If you're serious about changing, then prove it. Start treating people with respect, including those who aren't popular or part of your group. And if you mess up, which you probably will, be honest about it. No excuses. Chloe wiped her tears with the back of her hand, nodding. Again. Thank you, she murmured, her voice cracking. I won't let you down. Over the next few weeks, Chloe began making noticeable changes. She started small, offering compliments instead of insults, and sitting with quieter students at lunch instead of isolating herself with her usual clique. During group projects, she volunteered to help classmates who struggled, earning tentative smiles from those she'd once dismissed. Her transformation wasn't immediate or perfect, but it was real, and it didn't go unnoticed. Around the school, attitudes began to shift. Inspired by Vin Diesel's message of kindness and seeing Chloe's efforts to change, other students started reevaluating their own behavior. The teasing that had once been brushed off as harmless jokes became less frequent, replaced by acts of encouragement and support. Even teachers commented on the positive atmosphere, noting how conflicts in class had decreased significantly. Jake and Mia were among the first to notice the difference in Chloe. One day, as the three of them sat together during lunch, Jake leaned across the table and grinned. You know, Chloe, you're actually kind of cool when you're not being a jerk, he teased lightly, earning a laugh from everyone, including Chloe. Thanks, I think, she replied, rolling her eyes playfully. For the first time in years, she felt accepted, not because of fear or manipulation, but because she was genuinely trying to be better. Amara watched these interactions with quiet satisfaction. While she still kept her distance from Chloe, preferring to focus on her own friendships, she couldn't deny the impact of what had happened. The school's culture was changing, one small act of kindness at a time. Despite the progress, Amara knew there was still work to be done. Not everyone believed in Chloe's redemption. Some students whispered behind her back, accusing her of faking her apology for attention. Others resented her past actions too deeply to forgive her quickly. But Amara chose not to dwell on negativity. Instead, she focused on the bigger picture, the potential for growth, both in Chloe and in the community around her. One evening, as she scrolled through photos on her phone, she came across a picture of her and her dad taken during his visit. In it, they stood side by side, smiling broadly despite the chaos surrounding them. Amara smiled softly, remembering his parting words before leaving Willow Creek. Strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up every time you do. She realized then that strength wasn't limited to individuals. It could also transform entire communities. By standing up to Chloe and involving her dad, Amara hadn't just confronted a bully, she had sparked a movement toward empathy, understanding, and unity. As she closed her phone and climbed into bed, Amara felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in weeks. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow, but for now she allowed herself to rest, knowing she had played a role in creating something meaningful. And that, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, was worth every moment of struggle. The tension between Amara and Chloe continued to simmer, bubbling beneath the surface of Willow Creek High's seemingly ordinary days. At first, Chloe's actions were subtle, petty tricks designed to unsettle rather than outright harm. She would accidentally bump into Amara in the crowded hallways, sending her books scattering across the floor. Sometimes she'd whisper mocking comments just loud enough for Amara to hear, but soft enough to avoid getting caught. Must be hard being so different, Chloe sneered one day as Amara bent down to pick up her fallen notebook. Amara simply smiled faintly, refusing to give Chloe the reaction she craved. But Chloe wasn't satisfied with silence. The lack of response only fueled her frustration. To her, Amara's composure felt like a challenge, a dare to push harder, go further. And so, the bullying escalated. It started with small things. Chloe convinced a few of her friends to ignore Amara during group projects, leaving her to do all the work herself. Then came the rumors, Whispers spread through the school that Amara thought she was better than everyone else because of her confident demeanor. Some students even speculated that she must come from money since her clothes looked stylish yet understated. None of them guessed the truth that Amara's adoptive father was a global superstar. Even if they had, it wouldn't have mattered to Chloe. Her jealousy wasn't about wealth or fame. It was about control. Amara's presence disrupted the delicate balance Chloe had worked so hard to maintain. One fateful afternoon after gym class, the situation reached a breaking point. The locker room buzzed with chatter as girls changed out of their uniforms, laughing and gossiping about weekend plans. Amara stood by her locker, quietly folding her clothes. She tried to tune out the noise, focusing on tying her shoelaces when she suddenly felt a hand shove her shoulder. Caught off guard, she stumbled backward, slamming against the cold metal lockers. Pain shot through her back, but before she could react, Chloe stepped closer, her face twisted in anger. "What makes you think you can just waltz in here and act like you own the place?" Chloe hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of conversation. The other girls froze, turning to watch the confrontation unfold. Amara blinked, steadying herself as she straightened up. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied calmly, meeting Chloe's glare with steady eyes. "Oh, don't play dumb with me," Chloe spat. "You strut around like you're some kind of princess, ignoring everyone else, like you're too good for us." Her words dripped with venom, each syllable laced with contempt. Amara opened her mouth to respond, but Chloe didn't give her a chance. Instead, she leaned in closer, lowering her voice to a growl. "Maybe I need to remind you where you are, and who's in charge." For a moment, the two girls locked eyes, the air thick with tension. Then, Chloe did something that shocked even her own followers. She shoved Amara again, this time harder, causing her to stumble sideways into another row of lockers. The metallic clang echoed through the room, silencing every whisper. Gasps rippled through the crowd of onlookers, but no one stepped forward to intervene. Amara winced, clutching her side where the edge of the locker had dug into her ribs. For the first time since arriving at Willow Creek, she felt truly vulnerable. Chloe wasn't done. Emboldened by the stunned silence, she took a step back and crossed her arms, glaring at Amara with undisguised disdain. "You think you're tough? Huh? Think you can just walk in here and change everything?" Her voice rose, bouncing off the tiled walls. "Well, let me tell you something. You don't belong here. You never will." The room seemed to shrink around Amara as Chloe's words sank in. They weren't just cruel. They were calculated, designed to strip away whatever confidence Amara had left. But instead of crumbling, Amara forced herself to take a deep breath. She knew better than to let Chloe see her cry, to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd won. Slowly, she pushed herself upright, brushing invisible dust off her shirt. "Is that supposed to scare me?" she asked, her tone deceptively light. "Because honestly, it's kind of boring." Her response caught Chloe off guard. For a split second, uncertainty flickered across her face, but it quickly hardened back into rage. "Boring?" she snapped, taking another threatening step forward. "You want to see boring? I'll show you boring." Before she could act, though, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the locker room door. A teacher appeared, peering inside with a concerned expression. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his gaze sweeping over the scene. The girls scattered like leaves in the wind, muttering excuses about hurrying to class. Chloe shot Amara one last venomous look before disappearing into the crowd, leaving her alone with the lingering sting of humiliation. Later that evening, Amara sat on her bed, replaying the incident in her mind. Physically, she was fine, just a bruise forming on her back, but emotionally, the weight of the day pressed heavily on her chest. She hated feeling powerless, hated the way Chloe's words had burrowed into her thoughts despite her best efforts to shake them off. Still, she refused to let the bully win. She had faced tougher challenges before, hadn't she? Moving to a new town, adjusting to life without constant reminders of her famous dad, finding her place in a world that often misunderstood her. All of it had taught her resilience. This was just another test. As she scrolled through her phone absent-mindedly, her finger hovered over her dad's contact. Vin Diesel wasn't just her adoptive father. He was her anchor, the person who always knew how to make her feel strong, again. He had raised her with lessons about standing up for herself, about using her voice even when it felt easier to stay silent. Yet, part of her hesitated. Telling him about Chloe meant admitting she couldn't handle this on her own. It meant inviting his protective instincts to kick in, which might lead to complications she wasn't ready for. What if he flew out to Willow Creek unannounced, confronting Chloe and making a spectacle of the whole thing? Would people treat her differently afterward, seeing her as someone who relied on her celebrity connection instead of standing on her own? With a sigh, Amara set her phone aside. For now, she decided to keep the incident to herself. She would deal with Chloe in her own way, on her own terms. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Chloe had made it clear she wasn't going to back down, and Amara knew she couldn't avoid the inevitable showdown forever. As she lay down to sleep that night, one thought lingered in her mind. Sometimes the hardest battles bring out the strongest versions of ourselves, and maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to prove exactly who she was, not just to Chloe but to herself.